All right, there we go. We're live on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to call to order the meeting of the City Council Committee for the General Government One Budget Committee. It's here on Wednesday, April 21st. We're starting at 6:02 p.m. And in attendance, you have on the committee, you have myself, Jack Knapp, in the chair. We also have Councilman Emil Bezade, Councilwoman Nancy Camissa, Councilman John Esposito, Councilman Dwayne Perkins. We have with us tonight the Director of Finance, David St. Hilaire, and City Council, Les Pinter. I will mention in the record, Mayor Joe Cavo is with us. And as far as the actual committees go, when I call upon your committee during the course of the event this evening, we'll introduce you into the record at that point in time. I don't want to spend time chasing around who's here and who's not. So also in effect with us, and I'm going to read the list of ex officio members that I have on my list. Please, I'm not slighting you. If I miss you when I'm done, please let me know. I have with us Councilman Roberto Alves, Councilman Salvatore, Councilman Priola, Councilman Rotello, Councilman Henry, Councilman Chianese, Councilman Molinaro. And that's as far as I got. Are there any other council people in attendance that I need to be made aware of?
Yeah,
Councilman Santos,
Fox.
Mr. Knapp.
Councilman Santos, thank you.
Councilman Fox.
And Councilman Fox, thank you.
I'm here, Jack. It's Vinny.
I got you. Councilman Visconti. Or no, I'm sorry, Councilman DeGilio. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Also.
I'm
Say it
sorry.
again. Councilman Tabersack?
Oh,
Yeah.
I got you, Bob. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that is all. So if you're not speaking, I ask that you keep yourself muted for the sake of background noise. I'll apologize in advance for my dog and my mother. They tend to be a little loud, so I've warned them. Okay. There is one piece of housekeeping before we get started. As far as the format goes, I'm hoping that all the council people, both the committee members and the ex officio members, have the format for this evening. I am going to be moving planning and zoning. It'll be the fourth item on the list, as Sharon has a planning commission meeting schedule, a Zoom meeting scheduled later. So that planning and zoning will be moved right following legislative assistant. So we'll do that item following the legislative assistant. So with that, I'll begin. For those of you who have done this before, you're all seasoned veterans. With your agenda that you received, you'll see the budget book page number on the summary for the ad hoc committee sent to you earlier by David St. Hilaire's office, and it will give you the page numbers to follow along, and we'll move on from there. So with that, what I'll do is I'll call on David to basically give a brief overview of that page number, or the information on that page, and then we'll call upon the department head of that department to add remarks if they so choose. So with that being said, if everybody could turn if you want to turn your budget books to page 119, we can start with the city council. David, if you'd like to take it from here, buddy.
Sure. I will just give me a second here, and I am going to share my screen with you. And just bear with me a second.
All right, you should be good now that I just allowed it.
Trying to find my mouse here. I've got two screens going on. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? You guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. What we have is the city council budget as proposed, and on page 119. And on page 119, the city council budget as proposed by the mayor is $8,900. $8,900. That's down from the budget from last year by approximately $1,900.
Okay, David, any remarks as to what we've reduced to create that
Well,
$1,900?
Yeah, as you can see, there are some areas that we marked it down a little bit to align more with the trend. And I can expand that if you want me to, but
No, that's fine.
there's some areas that we found some budgetary savings that honestly, if we could, we would knock it down. And that goes across all departments as well. So we felt comfortable enough to reduce in a couple line items. In some areas we had to increase, as you see, the $84. I mean, it's a minor, but they seem to be trending a little bit up in that area. And some areas are just rounding, but $8,900 seems to be reasonable for the city council.
Okay. Do any of the committee members have any questions? Okay, hearing none. Do any of the ex officio members have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, Ben Chinese.
Yes, Ben.
Thank you. Through the chair to David, the legal notices, we kept that pretty flat as budgeted. But year to date, as of now, we only spent 7,000. Do we
Right.
expect a lot more, or it doesn't, that seems to be overstated based on what I can see?
Yeah. On legal notices, you're talking about under ordinances, Councilman?
Legal and yes.
Yeah, that's actually in a different line item, but yes, that is typically we would see those expenditures come in later in the year because we have to advertise the budget and all that. But honestly, the state is allowing us to do things a little differently given the changes that happened during the pandemic. So we don't have to expend as much as we used to under, advertise like we used to. You can put a shortened notice, which takes up less space, and refer the public to a certain area. So those things are changing, and they have changed in recent years, but they're changing even more so, given how things are done. On Zoom and how we're advertising differently. But, fortunately, the state has listened to the towns in this regard because these ads can be very costly. So we did knock it a little bit. So that's what you're seeing under ordinances right here.
Right, just a follow up. You only knocked it down by $500.
Only 500, yeah, because we don't know how much we're going to need to update the charter and some of these other things. We always keep that as a little flexibility, just in case. We anticipate that the charter revision will kick off again at some point. When things start to ease up with COVID. We just don't know when it will be. It could be towards the end of next year. It could be sooner. We just don't know, but we needed to leave a little flexibility there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Mr. Chair?
Any other? Yes, I believe that was Mr. Salvatore, correct?
Yeah, through the
go ahead.
chair to David St. Hilaire. David, just curious, I see a part-time salary of $5,000. The actual was 0 in 19 and 20's budget. It was added to the amended budget, and there's been no expenditures this year. And there was no positions page for the city council. What does that money go for?
Well, if there's ever a need to supplement up there, if let's say the assistant is out for any reason, we have to backfill the position. As you can see, we haven't had to do that in a few years. Or if there's just the workload shifts and changes. One thing we've noticed over the last year is you know, things do shift and change and priorities change as well. And we have to kind of move resources around. I'm not saying it's that way in this particular situation, but we've seen that in other offices. You know, if there is a charter revision, you're certainly going to need some additional part-time support to help gather up all the changes that have occurred over the last 10, 11 years to assist in that regard.
Okay, so that
Thank
wouldn't
you.
be budgeted under the legislative assistant?
In part, some of it would. You know, several departments may assist in that. You know, because people, it's not as if you can have a part-timer go unsupervised. So you're going to have different people help in that particular project, but you would have some administrative help or clerical help, I should say. And this is probably where it would be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other ex officio members?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins, you go.
Thank Chairman, through you to Mr. St. Hilaire. Mr. St. Hilaire, I see that the budget for outside services has been cut by about 50%. I think that might be printing services. Would that be correct?
That is actually printing services, and it could be made up of several different things. Each year it's something a little different, but printing services could be one of it. But usually it's it really is a catch-all for outside. It could be stuff for a copier or stuff for any of those kind of things. So we kind of deal with it in a broad basis.
Yeah, through the chair. So where I was going was some of us still like to have printed copies of agendas, budget items. Will that be sufficient enough to continue with the printed versions of those special types of documents and normal documents, really?
Yeah, we haven't cut this, you know, in anticipation of reducing your printed copies or eliminating your printed copies. So that don't be concerned about that. So that's not why it's being reduced.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And keep in mind the legislative assistant also, and that's a different budget. You know, you have line items in there, so you know, sometimes these things overlap each other, and you know, because we don't have a separate person dedicated just for the city council, so the legislative assistant would help out. So you're really pulling, you know, different resources, and sometimes those costs, you know, if the legislative assistant's budget can absorb it, they will. If the city council budget is tapped out. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. That answer your question, Mr. Perkins, I would assume. Okay, thank you, Wayne. All right, moving forward. Next item on the agenda, page 121, is the mayor's office.
The mayor's office, thank you. 121, the mayor's office, as proposed, went up by $9,300. It's proposed at $498,386. And the primary drivers in that particular area are, you know, salaries, part-time salaries went up, and some adjustments in longevity, all in workers' comp, but basically the rest of the line items stayed the same.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. And just one thing to clarify. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So on page 123, it shows the payroll. And you'll know, I noticed, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask you to say it. The chief of staff is shown at half budget. So could you clarify why that is for everybody?
Sure. Because they field a lot of calls from, the public safety area, that's kind of shared between the mayor's office and public safety. It's been like that for as long as I can remember. And they really take a lot of overflow from the public safety, although the public safety has the public safety advocates and all that. They do take on a tremendous amount of additional calls from there. So we route over about what amounts to half the salary of the chief of staff, instead of going through each of the individual people in the mayor's office and prorating a portion of their salary. We just say half the staff salary. And just one thing to note is that and I'm highlighting the Office of Project Excellence. You may recall that was folded into the mayor's office, and that's why you don't see a budget there. So, it's that was Department 115. All right, that was done during last year's budget.
Okay. Are there any council committee members that have any questions of Mr. Perkins or Mr. Perkins, Mr. St. Hilaire?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, John.
Thank you.
Mr.
Through you
Esposito.
to Les Pinter. Page 122, under Mayor's Office Appropriations, these city memberships. Just a question. Are these required by contractual agreement, or is it?
I think you froze. Oh,
Can you hear me, Jack?
yep, go ahead, Lars.
I can hear you. I can
Okay.
hear you.
If I understand Councilman Esposito's question, contractual agreements, typically, I'm not aware of any contractual agreements that our office processes for these engagements and these memberships. These are typically annual subscriptions, and they don't commit for multi-years, so far as I know. So if the mayor's office, for example, I think there's a fee for the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities.
Yeah.
It used to be $25,000 annually or something like that, but that is an annual membership that has been in the budget. And there could be some others, but they generally cycle annually, not multi-year.
Yeah, and I can also answer that question. They
Please.
do. These are annual memberships, and the memberships are the Western Connecticut Council of Governments, WestCog, CCM, and U.S. Conference of Mayors. So I think you're all familiar with WestCog and CCM. I believe you're all participants, or you're certainly probably members of. And the U.S. Conference of Mayors is something that I believe all mayors are members of. So those three memberships total about $85,381 a year. And they haven't changed in several years. I mean, they've kept those flat for several years.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious about the city's obligation to these memberships. Thank you guys for your answers.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito. Anybody else?
Mr. Knapp,
Mr.
Yeah,
Mr.
Mr. Cavo.
thank you. And just to Mr. Esposito's point, John, years ago, we had a lot of memberships, a lot of different memberships that were out there. We've, over the years, pared them down to these three. These three memberships are extremely important. You have access to them as council people to do research and get help from their legislative guides and aides. And the city departments all use the Western Council of Governments. We use WestCog. We use the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. WestCog, we just received the grant for the intersection at Locust and White through WestCog. And so they were instrumental in helping us get those monies from the Federal Department of Transportation. And so these dollars amounts, we benefit much more in received dollars than we pay out for these memberships, and the resources and the guidance and the help to us and the shared best practices are just really invaluable. And most department heads will tell you that at some point or another, they use these multiple times throughout the year. So there's a real benefit to having these memberships.
Thank you for the explanation, Your Honor. I didn't have any issue with them. I was just merely curious about the city's obligation to them. And I definitely agree. I see the benefit, to, being members of these, organizations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Esposito.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Cheney.
thank you. Yeah, again, through the chair, just two questions. One deals with the staffing of elected officials. Are we planning on giving raises to the elected officials this year?
Mr. St. Hilaire.
I believe that is the plan, to propose a 2.5% increase to the elected officials up for this fall. And that includes the mayor, the treasurer, and the town clerk.
Okay, Dan, follow up. If I
Yes, go
look
ahead.
at the present rates and the proposed rates, there's no 2.5% increase.
No,
For the
we
mayor.
don't. That is correct. We don't put it in there. We build it into the employee service benefit line down in 1999 because we don't presume anything. And so really it's after this meeting and the general government too. And then once the council approves the budget, we will move it into the line item.
And it's what line item was that you mentioned?
It's part of the 1999 line item. If you look in your budget, employee service benefits 1999.
Okay, we'll get that. Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question, again through the chair, deals with the lobbying services.
Yep.
I know we talked about this for several years now and the benefit of it. I haven't seen any notification from the lobbyists in at least a year. I haven't gotten any notifications of what they actually are doing for $22,500
Well,
and whether or not it's still needed or not. I mean, that's
well,
always been the question.
Yeah, no, actually, it's a good question. I can tell you that I was going back and forth with our lobbyists last night up until 10 o'clock. Dr. Pasquarella was on there. The mayor, several of us were going back and forth, trying to understand, what's going on in Hartford, and the proposals are flying back and forth, and our lobbyist is really working hard to get us some additional funding for the school, for the city. They're working on additional pilot money, restoring the alliance money that was, as you recall, supplanted with the ESSER money. So all these things are happening along with numerous other things, which I won't talk about it right now because it may be a little premature, but all very positive things that looks like it's going to, bring in additional money to the Board of Ed and to the city as well. So, but these are, and these are constant things. There are other things that are not hard dollar things that occur throughout. As you know, the list that of items that are being discussed within the legislative sessions are very long. And so they advocate for what we're looking for, and some of them are operational things that impact our individual departments. So we need a voice that can speak on our behalf. And so the lobbyists, canvases not only the Board of Ed, but our side to ask us, what concerns us. Not just in terms of dollars. Obviously, the dollars are hugely important and very important, but it's also the operational issues that impact our department, the unfunded mandates, all these things that really are not the headliners out there, but they do amount to an additional burden within our departments and how we move and operate, and eventually do cost our taxpayers more money. So, you know, our lobbyists have been working hard on that, and we do split the cost of the board of that on that.
Again, just a follow-up. So
Yes,
David,
go ahead, man.
I mean, so isn't that what our state representatives are for and our state senators for? I mean,
Yeah.
without their support, none of this happens. I mean, they can lobby even stronger for everything we need, and they should be our first go-to for anything we would need instead of going to a lobbyist, because without them, the lobbyists are nothing. They can,
Yeah,
I mean, they
you
could
know,
actually say, yes, I'm going to do this for you, or no. So if you're going to try to sidestep them, you can actually dig yourself a hole that, you know.
yeah.
So for $22,500, I'd rather go to my state representatives, and that's where I need to lobby, because they're the ones who are actually working hard, who are going to get us this extra money that we seek, not the lobbyists.
Well,
So that's just my opinion.
The elected reps are an integral part of the entire process. And the elected reps have many towns that they're representing. And, you know, and they're trying to look at how can they best serve all of those towns that they represent. So they're certainly vital to the entire process. So when the lobbyist is not intended to sidestep that process or sidestep the elected rep. To the contrary, you know, they're there to make sure that Danbury's voice is heard, and our interests and issues are heard and represented. Our representatives are, you know, push that forward. Because sometimes with all the towns sitting in the room talking to our representatives, you know, the issues may seem all the same and given the same weight, when in fact, maybe they shouldn't be given the same weight, because our issues are more dire, you know, more important. And that's what our lobbyist really does. It highlights why they are more important, that, you know, the ECS issue, the alliance funds, you know, right now the state has taken a position that essentially, you know, we're going to use this formula and spread it all out. And they try to, you know, adjust it with the alliance funds. But the fact of the matter is, it hasn't taken into consideration that Danbury is growing significantly when most other places are not. And so really, we have to fight even harder for that. And so there, you know, that's just one example.
David, thank you for your explanation. Ben, you know, I hope that answered your question. You know, we want to keep moving along here, and I know we want to dig into the weeds, but how deep do we want to dig? So
Well,
again, I
mean,
appreciate everything you said. Your question was great, and you know, I understand your concern of the,
all great,
you know, all great questions. So let's just, if you don't mind, Mr. Chianese, I'd like to move along.
Sure, but I'm
Unless you had anything.
going to readdress the issue at a later time, but yes, we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. The next comes, now we're.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question?
You sure can. I was about
through you to the Director of Finance. David, generally when we see an item in the budget that says proposed by department, and then the one adjacent to it that says proposed by mayor, we're looking at I'm assuming we're looking at a department budget that was proposed by the department head, and then that is then modified up or down by the mayor. Is that generally correct?
That's correct. Sometimes the Department of Finance also fills in some information that the department doesn't necessarily have.
Okay. So my question on this one then is, we have something that just jumped out at me that says proposed by department and then proposed by the mayor, but it's the mayor's department. How did that come out of sync? We've got proposed by the mayor's department at 420 and then proposed by the mayor at 429. So what happened there?
Well, just looking at the historical trends and looking at some of the other things, we go ahead and make an adjustment. One has to do with timing. Honestly, the budget is submitted at the end of January or end of December, beginning of January timeframe. That's when the departmental budget is submitted. We go through and meet with the departments. We're doing all this analysis through the month of January and February, and then we adjust and say, it might have sounded good, during December when they're putting it all together, but we really should modify this to make sure they're covered.
All right, thank you, Mr. Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rotella. Anybody else have any questions on this line item? Mayor Cavo, is there any additional comments you'd like to add?
Nope. Thank you, Mr. Knapp. I was going to answer
Okay.
Mr. Cheney's, but we can do that offline.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
The next line item is line 1, page 126, legislative assistant.
All right, legislative assistant, the bottom line is that they went up a little bit. Their budget is 68,556, primarily in sick leave. I mean, that may adjust every year, depending on how much sick leave is used or unused at the time that we do the budget.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. St. Hilaire on this line item? Committee members? Ex officio members?
Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Perkins.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. St. Hilaire. Looks like a new line item for sick leave showed up in this new budget. Can you just explain how that works for us?
Yeah, it's not really a new line item. It's in every department that has employees. Sick leave is, and the reason why you might not have seen it in certain years is that if the employees have used up their sick leave, then you may not see it at the time that we've done the budget because there's no reason to put in an amount for the sick leave. And what that represents is really half of the amount of time. So let's say, I'll just give you an example. Let's say they have, 8 days of unused sick leave. We would pay out only 4 days of it, and that's per contract. So, they would get an amount equivalent to 4 days. The other 4 days are, it's discarded. So they're paid out at 50% of unused sick days. So keep in mind, because of COVID, there's a lot of unused sick days, unused vacation days. Everything has been kind of in flux on that. So as we start to unwind or return to normalcy, you'll start seeing this stuff return to normal as well.
Just a follow up. So you said getting paid for unused sick days. I think we had this kind of conversation back a while ago. It almost seemed like it was a bonus.
Not a bonus.
You get paid for unused time?
No, it's not a bonus. They're entitled to the time, but they're entitled to use it as if they're sick. But if they're not sick, then they would get paid out half the amount that they have remaining. So otherwise, what you could see, it's basically encouraging people to stay healthy, continue to work, and hopefully, they do work, and because it's a lot more expensive to have to fill the gaps, either with other people or overtime and all that kind of thing. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair.
Hearing none I think I heard Mr. Salvatore, correct?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on what Councilman Perkins asked to David. David, is the payout of sick time contractually obligated, or are those non-unionized employees that are getting that?
The non-unionized generally follows the DMEA contract on that. So it's the DMEA, and so in a general sense, that's what happens. So when I say contractual, I'm wrapping all that together.
Okay, the only reason I asked is, I mean, in healthcare, sick time is a privilege that's there just in case, but we don't pay out. That's the only reason why I wanted to ask that, because sometimes it is contractually obligated.
Right. It is in our case, for the DMA.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore.
Mr. Chair,
any-
I do,
What do I have? Mr. Giannis.
right? Of course, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't worry, I'll ask you every time.
All right. There you go. Thank you.
I'm not gonna miss you, Ben.
All right, so we had this question last year because I asked the same question to follow up. So I'm just using this as an example. So the legislative assistant position is a salaried position. So
Could you repeat
if
that,
they're
please?
sick,
Could
okay.
you I'm sorry, repeat that?
So the legislative aid position assistant is a salaried position, correct?
Yes.
So they'll get paid whether they're sick or not, correct? Because you're salaried.
Well, yes, yeah. But
So
there-
why
there are
would we pay them the salary plus sick time? So the question that Councilman Perkins asked would be correct. They'll get their salary plus any unused sick time paid out. So it would be
Well,
like a bonus.
Okay, no, well, let me answer that question with this. Okay, so they're allotted a certain amount of sick time. And let's say 10 days. If they go beyond that and they don't have any other leave time, they would not get paid.
So we would deduct from the salary.
You would deduct from their salary.
And that's legal.
If
Salary to salary.
there's no, if they have no other leave time available, that's what we would do.
And that's a legal thing to do for a
That's a legal
salaried
thing,
individual.
right? Because they have no other leave time available to them.
Okay, I mean, I don't know the legality. I'm gonna leave it there, but I'm gonna follow up on that. Just
Yeah,
so on
follow
my
up on that.
purpose.
I mean, because we have a step process we go through, that you have to use your leave time. If you're out a certain number of days, then you're, consecutive days, then you can go to short-term disability.
That's different.
And it's out, right? And but that's not what you've asked, and that's not what we're talking about. So, but, if let's say you take a day off every week and, you can't just take a day off there, every other week and then use up your vacation, use up your personal, use up your sick, and then still get paid.
It just usually salary get paid. Okay.
You can't just get paid for not showing up.
Oh, no, I understand.
And that's kind of what there has to be a consequence if you use up all your leave time and you don't show up. And the consequence is you don't get paid.
And that has happened, apparently.
Yes, it has.
Just one more follow-up, if I may.
Okay,
The new family.
of
Leave
course,
Act,
Mr. Giannis.
Thank you. The new Family Paid Leave Act, that's been as of January 1. How does that impact this budget, if any at all?
It doesn't really impact this budget too much.
So the short-term disability does not change at all? Nothing?
Right. There's not a material impact.
Okay, thank you, through the chair.
Thank you, Ben. Any further questions on this matter?
Lots of good questions tonight.
Yeah, very good. Hearing that, is there anybody else from the Legislative Assistant's Office that wants to chime in? I don't believe I saw her, but okay, we'll move on. Okay, as I had stated earlier, I wanted to move planning and zoning.
Right.
Even though I know that Sharon is probably, wishing she could stick around. So I'd like to move planning and zoning next, which is on page 177.
Okay. So we have planning. I'm just going
Right,
to
so
go right down to the bottom line of planning. Planning's budget is essentially flat, but actually it went down about $1,400. And most of that reduction is in workers' comp costs, about just under $1,100. And you can see some movement between lines. Some adjustment in part-time, overtime. They, oh, that's permits, my apologies. But that's basically what you're seeing, is some adjustment in the legal and public notice. We didn't account for whatever the state is doing generally overall for legal and public notices, just to follow up on one of the questions before. So that's why you're not seeing a massive reduction, because we really have to assess how much will that impact us. It will impact us, but it's not going to cut it down to a third of what we're doing. It may cut it down by 20%, 25%, but we just don't know. So generally, we will do the budgetary impact after the fact. So not anticipation of, okay?
Thank you, David. And just one question. So on our books on page 178, I'll ask this question because I know it happens throughout, but could you just clarify the salary adjustment for partially funded positions? So that happens in a lot of these different departments. So,
Yes.
so just
yes.
clarify for everybody what that is and how you make that. Thank you.
On page 178, you'll see a number in red, parentheses, 39,276. And then if you go up a little bit, you'll see parentheses on the left to associate planner PF, partially funded. So that position that is associate planner of 69,324 is partially funded. So you take the net of that two numbers, 39 and the 69 minus the 39, that gives you about $30,000 for that position. Okay.
Okay.
So you might just say it's probably funded for about what, 5 months.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Does anybody else
you.
have any questions pertaining to the planning and zoning? Okay, hearing none, I'll call on Sharon Calitro, the head of planning and zoning, or head of planning, to see if she has anything to add.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, everybody. No, I'm fine with the budget as proposed by the mayor for next year.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Okay. We'll move back on to the normal schedule. Sharon, enjoy your evening.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you moving me around. Thank you.
No problem.
Probate.
Okay. Back to the normal agenda, which is page 119, which is that what I'm showing you for the ordinances, David?
If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That.
Yep. Gotcha.
I
Okay.
think so the probate is on page 129.
Yep, page 129, probate.
All right, the probate went up about $1,450 for a proposed budget of $29,000. Generally, they pretty much get what they asked for. However, this year, it's a little bit less than what they asked for, and that's because their historical trend really can't support what they asked for. They have plenty of money in there at $29,000, and that's an increase of what they have. So, and as always, if they do need more money, we would, work with them on that. But historically, as you look at their trends and everything else, they have plenty of funds in there.
Okay, thank you. And any committee members have any questions of Mr. St. Hilaire on this? Any ex officio members? Okay. I saw Judge Yaman, I believe, here. Judge, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add. I just wanted to thank everyone very much and have a great night.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Judge.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. Moving on, we'll go to page 132, Registrar of Voters.
Okay, Register of Voters. Register of Voters went down $23,800 to a budget proposed by the mayor of $248,200. And the reason for that is because there were primaries and other things included in their budget from last year. And that's why you see the election workers primarily is one of the big decliners. And some of the other stuff related to supplies and purchase services to support, the presidential election. So, and as you know, every year could be different for them. They always look at every election based upon what is as they're directed by the state. So, if they need to submit a request for additional funds, they will do that. But they may have different requirements, and we just simply don't know. So, they submit a budget and we modify as we go along, as we've done on many occasions, based upon the requirements of the state.
Thank you, David. And so a question on that. So, the other night we voted without going to referendum. We know there's a cost associated with a referendum. Very good chance, I believe, we'll see a primary this year. Have we budgeted for those? Are those budgeted here, or do they have to come back to you for that?
Well, the primary would be before July, right? Or no, the referendum would have been before July. My apologies. The referendum.
September.
Yeah, the referendum would have been before July, so that would have been in this year's budget. The primary,
right?
You're right. Thank you for clarifying. The primary, chances are they would probably have to submit an additional request. But my guess is that they would wait until the election to do that because they have plenty of funds to make it through a primary without any issues. And then, they would wrap it into the main thing, which is the election day itself, because they may be dealing with other things at that time.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. Does anybody else on the committee have any questions of Mr. St. Hilaire? Hearing none. Does any of the ex officio members have any questions? Okay. I don't think I saw either of the registrar of voters here, although maybe I'm wrong. Is Mary Ann or Joan in attendance? I didn't think so. Okay.
No,
we'll move on.
I can tell you that we're generally, we go with whatever they need. So if they determine that they need to put something in August, then we'll have to, because as I said, it's very fluid in what their needs are there. And if we're still in the middle of everything, the COVID requirements and everything else, and they have to adjust, with all the social distancing, simply we're just going to have to modify the budget, So
okay.
We'll deal with it as it, based upon what their needs are.
Okay. Very good. All right. I'm Corporation Counsel.
Corporation Counsel. Yep, their budget as proposed by the mayor is about $892,000. That's a reduction of about $12,000, and primarily in legal services. That that really, as you guys know, every year that can, this could be okay or it could spike up. There's a lot of factors that, a few factors that come into play. The cost of tax appeals, the cost of some of the special things that we're working on, which you're aware of those cases, and we don't even know about the cases that could come up. So, I think tax appeals, we have a couple big ones coming up, but all the small ones are winding down. We just settled one today. So, which is great, you know, where the number is getting smaller and smaller on the number of unresolved cases. But, you know, we, as Les will, I think Les is, oh, I'm sorry, Bob is here. So I'll leave that up to Bob to discuss. But the other lines are pretty flat, as you can see. Subscriptions and memberships, that is really represents their spend trend, and that's the only reason why that's going up. That line was, you know, the budget last year was just too low based upon the cost of the subscription for their legal books and all this other stuff. So, all right.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Hearing none. Any questions from the ex officio members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Salvatore.
through the chair, you know, when I was going through the different departments, I noticed that conferences are listed on 15 departments and total nearly $30,000. Now, in a $267 million budget, that's not a lot, but I work and live in healthcare, and conferences are one of the first things to go when it comes to cutting expenses. And my question about conferences are they, again, contractually obligated? If they are contractually obligated, do any of the unions offer conference reimbursement? Because I could tell you, like in healthcare, SEIU 1199, they beg us as management to push their members to use the conference budget. So we tend to not have as much on the hospital side.
Yes, I mean, what is and may be contractually obligated is the CPEs. I mean, so the conferences is kind of a loaded line, right? So it, you know, is it training, conferences? You know, many of us, you know, and this goes across the organization, whether you're union or non-union, have certifications, and not just one, but several that we have to maintain educational requirements. So, you know, you can do that online, which of course we had to do that last year, and happens on a semi-regular basis anyways, regardless of COVID, because you just simply can't get the time away from the office. So I would tend to say that, are they contractually obligated? An actual conference may not be, but the CPEs and some additional training may be. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's hard coded in some of these things that an actual conference is. But it's not significant, and that's why you see that number so low. You may see it in the public safety side, though. You know, and it would be under the training area, not conferences.
Yeah.
Like, so does that answer your question?
Sure, go ahead.
It does. I mean,
Okay.
I have licensure and I have to maintain so many CEUs, and but the hospital says that's on me because I'm the licensed individual. So that's the only reason I asked that. But you brought up a good point, and I was going to wait until I get to another area. But out of the budget, there's also a line called training and training. Okay. And you kind of said that, and that's huge. That's $162,000, and it makes me think it's things that have to be done. Like the fire department's line is $88,000. I'm thinking that's fire school, and the PD is $39,000, right? But is there flow over between the two of these? Some people may call a conference training, and now if you add $29,000 and $162,000, is there areas in there that you could move that money to other areas of the budget if need be? And again, I know there's small amounts, but
well, that's I mean, actually, administratively, within a department, the department head can move the budget around as they need to. The only restriction that we have really is don't move any of the regular salary stuff You know, you can't move regular salaries. Even if you have a vacancy, you can't move it. And we may allow you to move it at the end of the year if, if you're, have an overtime issue. Where you'll see that in the PD and the FD, and in public works too, because obviously if they're down people and they have minimum staff requirements so we'll allow them to shift from regular salary to overtime. So, but there's regular movement between the line items because they change their plan. So, and the example you brought up is good. They may say, well, I'm not going to do these conferences this year because I want to do more training. I want to do, what we consider training. And so, they can certainly use their managerial discretion on that as well. We also don't let them to move between the fuel, the electricity, and heating fuel, motor fuel, and that kind of thing. But a workers' comp they can't touch. But the other lines are wide open for them.
Okay, thank you. So in other words, it's like sanctioned buffering for the budget.
Yes.
Those areas could be used for other places. I get it. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I took 2 questions there. Thank you very much. But
no problem.
That's one less from later.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Okay. So where was I? You lost me here. Okay. That's Corporation Counsel. Is there any further comments or questions? At this point, I'll ask Mr. Yaman. I think I saw you. Are you still with us, Bob? You're the head of Corporation Counsel. There he is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're perfectly satisfied with our budget. The only comment I would make would be that to reinforce what David said about the unpredictability of our expenses. Based on what we do, we never know what's going to come in the door, and almost by definition, a lot of what we do is unpredictable. So I think we do pretty well in keeping the budget fairly level from year to year, given that reality.
And
I think we're getting a pretty good bang for our buck.
To help mitigate with some of that unpredictability, we do have a reserve that the council, that we go to the council every year to try to restore. Every year that we draw down on it, we'll go back to the council if we have funds left over to try to restore. And so that is, a reserve that we have on the balance sheet. So because we just don't know how much this is going to be from one year to the next. So rather than put in a big number and tie up those budgetary funds year after year, we put a baseline on our reserve, and that has served us very well. And it's given us that financial flexibility that we need in that area.
Exactly.
Okay, David. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yemen. Any further comments? Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on. All right. Next is Town Clerk, page 169.
Okay, 169, the Town Clerk.
Is that what I got?
What's that? The budget for the Town Clerk is $398,000. And that increased slightly by about $3,400, a little bit more than that, but 3,419 is the actual number. They do have some contractual increases in there, and we had some reductions that offset that $5,500 increase in regular salaries. Their printing and binding went up a little bit. And they had reductions in maintenance and repairs and materials and supplies across the board. So a lot of movement between individual lines, nothing of significant really. But
thank you. Any questions of Mr. St. Hilaire by the committee? Hearing none. Any questions by the ex officio members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Chianese, haven't heard from you in a few line items.
I was waiting for the call. I never got it. But I didn't have any comments here because you all do a good job, so there's no reason
Hey.
to go on their question. But my question through the chair, the town clerk revenue, the projected revenues for 21 compared to 22 is like $200,000 decrease. Why is that?
Well, let me get to the page that you're on there.
168.
168, thank you.
And even the one that is proposed by the department, you also decreased as well.
Well, I think primarily because this year is not really, it's more of a fluke than it's been an extraordinary year. We just don't know whether that's going to continue in the next year or not. And, I think when I look at the historical trend, I had to adjust the budgetary revenues accordingly. And, if you look at the budget from last year, we're about on par with the budget from last year. But this year we had some spikes because, obviously everybody's out refining, everybody's doing all these, things, and activity is up. But I don't know how long that's going to last, and I certainly don't want to base the city's budget on, those kind of things. But I think historical trends, the budgetary number that we used is supported by the historical trends. And we really can't project out what we think we might get unless there's some level of comfort to that. And we see rates creeping up. I just don't know how much longer that's going to stay up. And as you know, we did use an additional $1 million $1 million on the revenue side already for the, I guess, fluctuation. So I didn't want to go too much on that. I didn't want to be overly optimistic across the revenue. So I hope that answers your question, but I can't be overly optimistic on the individual lines when I have $1 million on the American Rescue.
And to follow up to the chair. So is
Sure.
the revenue proposed by the town clerk, or do you propose the revenue?
It's a mix. It's a mix.
Can-
I mean, I look at what they're projecting, and I look at their history, and I will take what they're projecting into account. I can't, if I was to take the department's numbers, if they submitted numbers, and not all departments submit numbers, but that's not their skill set, honestly, doing projections. And, we would be in trouble. So, I think the town clerk has a very good history of tracking their information in great detail, and we track it. They provide us the information to track that information, that detail. So that adds a fair amount of level of comfort. But unless there's going to be an increase in fees or something else that's going to be the driver of that increase, it's very difficult to make an increase on a projected trend, unless that's already happened, for at least a couple of years.
So just again, a follow up, if I may, Mr. Chair. Okay, maybe
Sure,
if the town clerk is on the line, maybe she can opine a little bit more on the revenue as well. But question is a question. If the matrix, the sale goes through and the city purchases those units, wouldn't that be a substantial conveyance tax on that? David?
Are you asking me or
David.
David.
Oh.
David.
Or
Um,
the town clerk, either one, but I would.
yeah,
assume-
yeah, there's a lot of great ifs there. But yes, there would be certainly some, conveyance tax, a nice chunk of change coming from it. But again, we don't want to get burned on when that may happen. We know, now that things have, now that, the big 99 happened the other night, that's more real. But we didn't know that at the time we put the budget together. But we also don't know what other factors may happen. So, that I think we just have to be careful about, now that this thing is a positive thing, then that's going to happen. Well, let's just take that right off the table and go forward with it, because there's a lot of other things that we think may happen that may not happen as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. And at the end, we'll ask Jan for her comments, if you don't mind, Ben.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Does any other members have any questions? Any other ex officio members? Okay. Hearing none, then I believe Jan is with us. Jan Giegler, Town Clerk, would you like to reflect on the matters here and give us your opinion on your budget position?
Yes, thank you very much. And we can work within the scope of what has been presented to us. But as we found this past year with the unpredictability of what happened with the elections, we did have to very much go back and ask for additional funding. Presently, with the elections, the governor, through his executive order, has extended the COVID requirements onto the elections through May, because some towns have May elections. So that would mean absentee ballots could be issued for COVID being a reason. He hasn't extended that as yet, so it's unpredictable for us what's going to happen in September or November. It was a severe impact on our department with what transpired in the last elections. And of course, that's not a budgeted item, but we worked with finance and they've been working with us to rectify some of that. This year, we have worked since March. My department has been in the office or working remotely. We're recording at an incredible rate. We usually do a book in 2.5 weeks. We're doing them in a day now with a number of refinances and new purchases. When we get large purchases, we always advise finance and economic development so that they can get a grasp on what some of these big transactions have taken place. Some of our monies, unfortunately, even though it's a lot of activity on our part, the state gets a huge chunk of that. Smaller items, some of the states suspended us collecting fees, like on liquor permits and certain like fishing, even though they're small, that little nickel and dime, we weren't even notified that they were no longer. So for 2 years now, it's going to be that I haven't collected any money on any liquor permits that are throughout the city. I heard, Ben, with some of what he said, like with conferences for us, we have a new assistant town clerk now, and she has a requirement that she has to fulfill getting her certification to be a town clerk. So that's going to come out of that line item. For that, it's not so much a conference because they were doing them virtual this year. And if I may, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to address the other issue is about, I could say with the lobbyists, we depend on them too, as far as to listen on what's going on with the election process. And it depends on what our legislators, what committees they sit on. And if they don't sit on certain committees, you're not going to hear until the very end, until a bill gets to the floor of the House for a vote. And by then it's way too late. So you really have to rely on the lobbyists to get there on the ground floor to advise us of things that have been presented. And it's really very valuable to all of us to have that information ahead of time. So I think that's really important. to get that. But, you know, with, it's been a challenging year. I'm still short-staffed, and we're just looking for a better 21-22.
Thank you, Jan. Okay.
Mr.
We
Chair,
thank you
if I
for your
may.
comments. And yes, I was just gonna, does anybody have any questions of Ms. Gager? Oh, Mr. Gianese.
I'll yield the floor if someone else wants to ask before me.
The floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on something that you said. You said you were short-staffed. Can you opine on that a little more?
Well, our assistant town clerk left us in January. So I was down.
Is that
you
Jeff?
know, Jeff left. He took a position in Westport. There's about 4 town clerk positions that are appointed positions, which is what Lori took in Wilton. And he had the opportunity, great opportunity for him. So it took us till last week to fulfill that position. But we filled it with my part-time person who had been here for 5 years and has worked alongside him. So now we have 2 assistant full-time town clerks, but now we don't have a clerk typist. So trying to work remote and to keep 2 people in and 2 people out. We're now back, we're here full staff, but now we're allowing people to take some of their vacation time that they are entitled to. So we're when it's short, we had 2 of us running the whole department for the last 2 weeks. So it's been a little challenging.
Okay, and there's one more, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
What is an assistant registrar of vital statistics? What do they do?
They're in charge of all the births, deaths, and marriages. So that any births that come in, they have to record them and have to speak with the hospital and process the births. Does all the marriages, all the marriage applications, they process the licenses, and then when they're returned, have to record them with the state. And of course, the deaths, we've been working every day with the funeral homes. We were actually meeting them in the parking lot because of the number of deaths that were happening. So we have to process all death certificates, not only for the people in Danbury, but any deaths that occur in regional hospice, at home, or at Danbury Hospital. We have to process all of those. And also the burial permits and the cremation permits. And they're in charge of overseeing that.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jack.
Sure. Thank you, man. Okay, any further issues with the town clerk? Hearing none, we'll move on.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Oh, did I miss one? Oh,
Well, I
Mr.
wanted to wait until the members had a chance to jump in, but if you can do it, is it okay to do ex officio at this moment?
Sure,
Yes?
absolutely.
Okay. All right, through the chair to
Yes,
Jan.
please.
Jan, I'm sorry to hear that Jeff left. He was he helped me out on a couple of things that we did, particularly the recount. A very knowledgeable guy. He was just a great addition to your staff. And it also, this whole COVID tragedy brings up how many pockets of the city it's affected besides the obvious personal tragedy, that it just seems to be like an octopus with 1,000 times more arms, just having a profound effect everywhere. But I did want to ask you on a more hopeful note, if you had a percentage figure in dollar terms about the increase in transactions. You had mentioned that earlier. Thank you, John. Is she still here?
Ballots or the absentees?
No, not the absentees, the transfers that you were recording, that you were talking about to economic development, the property transfers, a percentage in dollar amount. How much has it increased in terms of dollars?
I really don't have that figure.
Ballpark. I mean, 50%.
I couldn't even give you that one. I rely on, we haven't been able, that's one of the things that has been sliding a little. We haven't been able to do our projections. We're just trying to get everything processed, and we're having things come in different ways, and we're processing everything that comes in on the day it's coming in. So people are dropping them off in the box downstairs, they're mailing them. And so the volumes with that. So where I like to keep the track of all the records and how many things come in and how many items we process, that's kind of been one of the things that we've had to put aside.
Okay, I get that. You're more concerned with recording accurately than doing an analysis of it. But you did mention what would normally be a week would take a week, you were doing in a day. So that to me sounded like a 7-fold increase or something. So.
Well, it's like, you can just figure by pages, there's 1,200 pages to a book. So you can figure how many of those we're recording because how many pieces there are to it. So, but if you want that number, I can get that for you.
I appreciate that. As long as it's not going to affect your day-to-day stuff. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Rotella.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. That concludes town clerk. We'll move on to 121 annual report.
Mr. Chair, just a final comment on the town clerk. That's one of those things, you know, we work with the town clerk to track all their history and provide that to the council. So we keep years of that history, and what usually happens is the assistant town clerk would provide us with that information, and we work with the town clerk's office to make sure it's correct. So you see that transactional history, which would then tie to the actual dollars that we have. And so you could see the volume, you know, over time of how much it's changed. And when Jan is talking about, you know, well, our volume has changed here in this area, this area, this area, but yet we don't get any more money for it. You can see those kind of things happen on how it really impacts you, all this increase in activity and the decrease of revenue in this area. But then you see the activity in another area and the increases in revenue, and that made up for the loss of revenue in another area. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to pull that together. That's been, you know, with everything else going on and the loss of you know, with Jeff, you know, moving to a different position, you know, we just haven't been able to pull some of these things together like that. But we just know, I mean, the transactions have been significant, and you know, you can see the dollars coming through, but you know, you just it'd be nice when the dust settles that we can get a chance to pull all that together. I'm sure Jan and I will get together at some point to be able to extract that and analyze it. But that takes, again, it takes some time to do that.
Understood, David, and thank you.
And if I might,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just
Yes.
add something to that.
This will be the final comment. Yes, please go.
I will. And then can I go home?
I hope so.
We implemented e-recordings this year, which has been like incredible for us. And we've picked on some new companies. So processing has been a big help, and collecting the monies has increased with more ease. So we're seeing a big impact with the e-recordings as well as what we're bringing in. So it was a good move. And we've done that through the grants that the council has approved for us to get. It's really helped us with electronically processing a lot of things. So I thank the council members for what they've given us, because it afforded us to be able to put our records electronic and open them up in March to the public, so that processes like the title searchers and the attorneys could continue to work and not be hindered by us not being able to provide information to them.
Well, you're
So I
welcome
thank
on
the
that, and
council.
thank you for getting those grants. It's very much appreciated on both sides.
Thank you. Okay, moving along. David,
Yes.
I've got annual report listed as next, page 121.
Page 121, 8,000. It's remained flat. If you recall, that used to be 10,000. And if it used to cost us a couple $1,000s more, and it didn't look half as good as it looks now. And now it looks really a nice, glossy, professional looking report for a couple $1,000s less. So no change anticipated there.
Thank you. Any committee members have any questions? Hearing none, any ex officio members have questions? Okay, we'll move on from there now to page 172.
172.
Which will be permit coordination.
Permit coordination. Permit coordination. Let's go down a little bit. The budget proposed is $368,000, a small increase of about $3,141. The biggest driver on that is, again, in salaries, about $3,600. And sick leave went up $1,400, offset by reductions in other areas.
Thank you. Okay, any committee members have any questions of Mr. St. Hilaire on this? Hearing none, any ex officio members have any questions? Don't hear any. That being said, Mr. Herty, I don't know if you're in attendance. If you
I
are,
am.
would you like to add your comments?
Yeah, I am,
There
Mr.
he
Chairman.
is.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sean Herty.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the mayor and thank the finance director and his department for it. I have no problem with the budget as proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Herty.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay. We'll move on then to Office of Business Advocacy, page 180.
All right, page 180, Office of Business Advocacy. As proposed by the mayor is $117,000, a reduction of about $9,430. Most of it's in professional services. Again, historical trends seem to indicate that the amount that we've been putting in seemed a little high. And being a tight budget year as it is, we just trimmed it back a bit.
Okay. Any questions of the committee members?
Mr. Chair,
Any? Yes, Mr.
John
Esposito.
Esposito, thank you.
John
Through
Esposito,
you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. Through you to Mr. St. Hilaire. I just noticing that there's two office line items. Could you explain that? I see one for $300 proposed by the department. I was just curious why there's two office lines there.
Two office lines.
Page 180.
David's 2,500 and 2,700. 5600 2,500 office and 57.2700 office.
One is equipment.
Oh, okay. So it's just a typo. There's a lack of
It's
info
the
there.
description is off a little bit. So the 5,700, you see the 57 on here?
Yep.
Right here.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, in my book, it just says office.
Yeah.
Under 57 and 56 is both just labeled office.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to change the description because that is a little confusing. Thank you for pointing that out, though.
No problem. Again, through the chair, if I may continue real quick.
Please do, yep.
I'm just noticing under sick leave a substantial difference compared to some of the other departments. I'm sure it's obviously just a, personal benefit, obviously not all employees have the same benefits and, paid the same. Is that just the difference here or because I believe this department's operated only by one individual.
It is. And keep in mind, that's the sick leave that our unused sick leave calculated at the time that we put the budget together. So let's say somebody gets sick between now and June 30th, this number could change. It's not going to go up. It's only going to go down. So the actual impact to the budget will go down to next year. So even though there may be a budget amount of 1462, the actual cost is going to be less than that if they use sick time from when we put the budget together and June 30th. And that goes across all the lines, by the way, not just this department.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions pertaining to the Office of Business Advocacy? Hearing none, is Mr. Palazzo with us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
There he is. Okay, Mr. Roger Palazzo, the head of the Office of Business Advocacy.
I just want to thank the committee, and I am able to work within the budget proposed by the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palazzo. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I'd just like to take a brief moment to thank Roger Alonso for all his help in spurring Eversource to great heights of putting a gas line on Pleasant Street. It's been a 20-year effort, and Roger was a big part of that. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Paul.
Tom.
Thank you. Okay. Our next line is Conservation Commission, page 183.
Yes, thank you. Conservation Commission, the budget is proposed by the mayor is about $12,750. That's an increase of about $5,090. And the primary reason for the increase is really for maintenance of the grounds. And, you've got several properties involved in this. We realize that some of the newer properties were not included, like the Weedle properties. And some of there's one other one, I'm sorry, it escapes me, but it's like $2,500 for each of them. What's the other one?
Farrington?
What is it?
Farrington, yeah.
The Farrington?
Farrington?
No, it's one of the newer ones, but so that's why we threw 2,500 in there. I was working with Jack Kay on this, and we realized we probably needed to throw some extra money because clearly it's not being maintained as we should. And for the last couple of years, we've had to find money for those properties, and it was just being missed in a budget. So we would have to beg, borrow, and steal it from other places. So we built it into the budget, so it wouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
What's
Any
the Weedle
questions for
property?
Mr. St. Hilaire from the?
Is it the Weedle property, David?
What's that?
The Weedle property, the one we just acquired not that long ago?
That's one of them, and I do have the other two. I can bring it up on the screen, but it'll take me a couple minutes. But I can certainly
No,
provide
that's
that to
okay.
you.
No problem. Just trying to help your
Thank
memory
you.
out.
Yeah, that's one of them. I remember that, and probably Bear Mountain is another one. But that one was already in there. It's two other ones. I think it's like there are 3 new properties that we realized were not included. But anyways, I'll get it back to you. All right.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions from the committee? Any further questions from the ex officio members? All
Mr.
right,
Chair.
hearing none. Yes, who did I hear?
Councilman Esposito.
Oh, yes, Councilman Esposito, sure.
Thanks.
Floor is yours.
Just a brief question, perhaps through you to the mayor. The Weedle property, I'm not familiar with that. I'm familiar with the family called Weedle. I don't recall this before the city council. Is this something that's going to be coming to us in the future, or am I just overlooking it and forgot about it?
No, it's already happened, Mr. Esposito. The property's already been transferred to us.
Oh, okay.
Maybe about a year ago, maybe 18 months ago.
Where's this property located? Is it by the reservoir?
It's, I believe it's up near Terrawild Park, if I'm not mistaken. It's over on that side of town, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was Bear Mountain, Joe.
Bear Mountain?
Longridge, guys. Longridge.
Longridge? Longridge.
Okay, thank you. That's
It's over on that side of town by Terrawild.
Oh, that's
Okay.
Westerman's property. I got it mixed up.
We'll figure it out.
Westerman's Bear Mountain.
We
Thanks.
have it already.
Sorry if that's a bit off topic.
No problem.
No problem, John. Okay, any further questions of Mr. St. Hilaire regarding the Conservation Commission? Hearing none, is there anybody from the Conservation Commission? Okay, in that case, we'll move on. Mayor's Discretionary Fund, I think we covered that, no? Which is on page 121.
Yeah, I don't know if we did or not, but basically these are grants that are not otherwise, most of them are grants or, covers some of the extraneous board costs. But, when the band or some of these other local groups wants a few $100 for this or that, or it could be up to $1,000 or whatever, they make a request to the mayor's office, and the mayor makes a contribution through his office. And that's generally what these kind of things are for.
Okay, thank you. Any of the committee members have any questions of Mr. St. Hilaire regarding this? Any ex officio members have any questions? Okay. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. Mr. Mayor's on a break.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on.
All right. Fair
Next
rent.
is Fair Rent Commission, page 189.
Yeah, their proposed budget of 345, small reduction of $5. Honestly, I'm not really sure why I reduced it at all, but I did. It's probably because who knows? But reduction.
All right, any questions of Mr. St. Hilaire from the committee on this? Any questions of the ex officio members to Mr. St. Hilaire? Okay, hearing none, is there anybody here from the Fair Rent Commission? I didn't think there was. Okay, we'll move on. Next is city memberships. That was, and I think we had discussion earlier on that, page 122.
Yeah.
So does anybody, if you don't, I think, David, you've already gone through that.
Yeah, it's the same as it was last year at 85,381. No change.
Okay. Does any committee members have any questions? Do any commission members or ex officio members have any questions? Okay. Lake Authority, page 191.
Yes, on page 191, the Kenwood Lake Authority. Their proposed by the mayor is 85,670 is flat with the current year. However, it should be noted that they did request a significantly higher number of 139,281. And the other towns did not agree with that. So we put in the same number as we did for the current year. And there may be a change to this at some point. I don't think there's any doubt that the need may be more than what they're currently getting. The big disagreement is how they're going about funding the additional boats and staffing of the boats and ongoing operations related to those, boats and security and patrols of the lake. I was on the discussion on that call with the mayor and others. I don't think anybody has any argument with, the need to, do more patrols on the lake. It just may be the number of patrols or the number of boats and how you go about it, whether you do it all at once or over the course of a number of years. But the amount of increase was too much at one time for the majority of the towns. And until that gets ironed out, we'll keep it flat. And then we'll have to deal with that at some point in the upcoming year.
Okay. Any questions from the committee
Mr.
regarding
Chair.
this? Mr. Esposito.
Thank you. I've got two questions, and I apologize. One may be off topic. I'll ask that second, but I'm going to ask the obvious question, which I think I see it under their major objectives. Through you to Mr. St. Hilaire, their request for an increase, is that to cover their proposed lake science vessel? Or are there other reasons for maybe expanding their operation or?
Well, it's really to cover the patrol boats because of all the activity that's going on up there. If because of the social distancing and, people were getting outdoors more, and there was a lot more activity at the lakes, and they saw a surge. And that's, they had a need even before COVID, and they're switching the type of boats that they're using. So, the boats that they're currently using are not really meant for the purpose that they're using it for, and they're certainly not long-lasting boats. So, they're looking at changing the type of boats, but also getting more boats. But they also have to staff it. They have to, there's a lot that goes with all of that. And of course, this science lab is the other thing they like to do. So they're trying to do an awful lot all at the same time. And, that increase of going from 85 to 139, that was going to stay there, not drop back down after they go out and buy their new boats. And that's where they lost everybody. And so, because then, of course, that's the new baseline. And then then every year there's probably going to be increases after that. So that's, I think, where they were basically instructed to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I asked because I've always noticed that this seems to go up, the funding for the Lake Authority, pretty incrementally, year by year. I have nothing against it. I support the Kenwood Lake Authority. I know they're doing a great job. It's a great resource to our community. I was just always curious with their operation. I've reached out to them, a number of times, and don't have the greatest amount of luck. Maybe my fault in part, due to my work schedule, getting responses and establishing lines of communication with them. I'm not surprised if there isn't even a representative here this evening, which I doubt there is. An additional question I had, which is, like I said, probably off topic, and if the chair will allow me, I'll ask you, Mr. Pinter. It's just about, when a boat patrol issues a fine, where does that money go to? Does that go to the Lake Authority, or is that reimbursed to the city? If it's a violation, in a law, or can you opine upon that if the chair will allow?
Yeah, I will. And Les, if you could keep that brief, we are running over as it is.
Thank you.
I wouldn't want to stop the question, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that. I don't know where it goes because the authority has 5 members, and it's specified that each participating municipality kind of weighs in with its own ordinance enactment for its participation. So offhand, I don't know where that goes, whether it's split among the authority members or not. I have to take a look at that, honestly. It just doesn't come up very often. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I don't know the answer myself, so.
I would probably say, if I could, Mr. Chair, that
Please do.
DEP would be the one issuing those fines, and so I would think that those monies would go back to the state through DEP. But that would just be a guess on my part.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, any ex officio? Yes, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you.
Yeah.
I guess, Mr. St. Hilaire, the number I'm seeing here, the 85,670, that's just our portion of what we pay in to this, let's just call it a consortium of those other adjoining towns, New Milford, New Fairfield, Sherman. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's just our share.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, and I don't believe there is, but is there anybody here representing the Lake Authority? Okay, we'll move on then. Danbury Public Library, which is on page 288.
All right, Danbury Public Library. All right, the bottom line is the mayor's proposed is $2,270,000. That's an increase of $35,101. And the bulk of that is in regular salaries. And sick leave went up a little bit. And there's been some offsets in workers' comp and outside services.
Okay. Any questions by the committee of Mr. St. Hilaire regarding on this? And ex officio members, are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Cheney's.
been quiet for a while now.
I know, I got the timer going here. You're doing good.
Okay, just really quick to David.
Yeah.
The increase in the salaries, that was contracted by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of those folks are union folks. And,
Okay.
there is an increase in DMEA.
Okay, second question I have is, again, the hot topic is the sick leave line again.
Yeah.
You showed an increase about 7,000. But looking back on the history on page 288, we never saw an increase that large for any given year. Even if you take the actual from 1920, salaries 1.4 million, it went up by 70,000, but the sick leave only went up by 2. So why is such a large increase here for a 37,000 increase?
Well, you got to take what's happened in the last year into consideration, and because of the way the schedule has been, people haven't used vacation or sick like they typically have, and so that's really what's going on here, and it's across the board. It's across the entire organization and across every municipality. We're not unique here, but what's happening is, these modified schedules, people haven't been able to go anywhere. They're not going on vacation. They're not using their vacation. And they, if they're working from home, if they're not feeling well, they're still going to work from home. They're not going to call in sick. So that's everything that's happening here. And once we return to normal, this will go back to normal. It will get back to the level it should be.
So using this follow up really quick. So using that, any unused vacation payouts will be in salaries regular, correct?
Any unused, they should be using most of their vacation. We allowed some vacation to be carried over until December, and then typically it should be used up through June, and then only a little bit is allowed to carry over beyond that. That amount was increased because of COVID and extended till December. And then, of course, we did the same thing through June because they just couldn't use it. They weren't around. But so we're gradually condensing this time and the amount so that, it's not going to be, you're not going to see a separate line for that. So what they're doing is, as I think somebody mentioned, Jan mentioned it, now that we're returning to normal, the staff are using up their vacation, so they're not in the office. So we're all running into that now because they have to use it before, much of it before June. You see what I'm saying? So now, so for example, my office, we're back in the office, Scott's office, tax collector, they're back in the office, but they have a lot of vacation built up. So now they're using up their vacation time. The offices are very sparse, not because we're, working remotely. It's because they're using up their vacation time. And so that's what we're going to see until year end and some time thereafter until that vacation time is used up.
So it's a use it or lose it policy for vacation, correct?
Yeah.
But for sick time, it's not. There's a payout for sick time.
Sick time is not, right?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Okay, any further questions regarding the public library?
I'm all done,
Okay.
Jack.
Thank you, Beth. You might want to wait for this one.
Nope,
Okay,
I'm
the
good.
next item and the last item has got to be the easiest one to budget, unless Ben's in the room, is the Longridge Library, page 292. David?
Longridge Library is flat at 14,000, no change.
No change. Any questions by the committee regarding the library to Mr. St. Hilaire? Any ex officio members? Yes, Mr. Perkins.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. Happy to see that we're still supporting the Longridge Library. As small of a space it is, they still do a very good job at providing library services for those people in that community. So I'm glad we're still behind them supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Okay, and is there anybody here, I don't believe, representing the Longridge Library? Okay. All right, so that being said, we finished our line items. I'll close discussion on the line items and refer to the committee. Committee members, is there a motion regarding Government One?
Your Honor,
Yes, Ms. Camissa.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend to the City Council to adopt the General Government One budget as presented with the proposed raise for the mayor and the town clerk as allowed by the Connecticut Constitution for December 1st, 2021 to November 2022, with the 2.5% raise for both offices, December 1st, 2021 for the first one and July 1st, 22 for the second raise.
Second. Thank you. Motion was made by Ms. Camissa, seconded by Mr. Bezay. Any discussion regarding the motion? Hearing none, then I'll try your minds. All those in favor of the motion presented, please signify by saying aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Okay, an aye. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay, do I have a unanimous then? I think I didn't hear everybody. Mr. Perkins and Mr. Esposito, I didn't catch your vote.
Oh, I voted in the affirmative, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
I'm sorry.
I'm a
and
yes.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So hearing that, the motion carries all those 4-1 at this point, or 5-0, unanimous. Hearing that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn is made by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Ms. Camissa. Meeting adjourned